Good morning. Hopefully this is working. I hit something right before we got started, and we're in Numbers 11, though, and we're going to finish up the chapter. Wonderful chapter, lots of cool stuff in it. Took us a little while to get there. Let's see, that way? Does that seem more centered? No. This seems more centered. I'm uncentered. The camera's uncentered. This whole court is out of center. Okay. I'm just not satisfied at all with this. Oh, well. There we go. That's centered. Now you had time to get here and get logged in. So, verse 31, Numbers 11:31. Now a wind went out from the Lord and brought quail from the sea and left them fluttering near the camp, about a day's journey on this side and about a day's journey on the other side, all about the camp, and were about 2 cubits above the face of the ground. And the people stayed up all that day, all night, and all the next day, and gathered quail. He who gathered the least gathered 10 homers. And they spread them out for themselves all around the camp. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was aroused against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. So he called the name of that place Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried the people who had yielded to craving. From Kibroth Hattaavah, the people moved to Hazeroth and camped at Hazeroth, which means the settlement. All right, so now let's see here. I've always loved this point. So a cubit is 1.5 feet, right? I mean, it's supposed to be elbow to tip of your arm. And so these things are 3 feet above the ground. And people got 10 homers. So here's how you do that, is you get yourself a stick, and right as the quail comes at you, you wham, you get it really hard, and boom, you get 1 homer. Then you whack another one, you get another homer, and you just keep hitting homers all day long. A homer, I had this written down, a homer is about 6 bushels, which is about 50 gallons. So, in short, the average laundry basket holds 1.5 bushels. So, 4 laundry baskets is 1 homer, which means they had 40, the least was 40 laundry baskets full of quail, which is about enough to give yourself 1 small side of chicken nuggets. Because quail, a quail breast is like the size of your thumb. They wanted meat. God probably gave them one of the most tedious meats to try. And I actually never ate quail. I wanted to when I used to live out of town in Ellensburg. I remember there was quail all the time, and I always thought about trying to shoot one and try and eat it. I had pigeon, but it really is. It's just like there's so little meat there to eat. But all that said, Kibroth Hattaavah, it translates the graves of cravings or the graves of lusts. I mean, a craving, a lust, a desire. I like graves of lust. That's one of my favorite pastors. That's what he always says it, and it's something. It's the fact that we have these desires, but the end therein is death. I mean, that's the problem, is that we give in to the desire, and then death comes from it. We don't want that. No way, Jose. We want to do what the Lord wants. But people complain, but I need meat. This is something I need, God. Well, God let them have it. And it ended up being the end of them. Their answered prayer was their ending. I wonder if the disease, the plague, came from the quail. The very thing they wanted to eat is the thing that brought them their sickness. When I was in Saudi Arabia, to the north of Mount Sinai, there is a mass graveyard. And I believe one of the guys I was there with, he said he did not think that was the graveyard necessarily from the golden calf altar, but possibly that it was actually maybe from this event. We don't know the location of Kibroth Hattaavah. We don't know exactly where it was, but there's a mass graveyard there, and it's actually quite fascinating because the locals call it a Jewish graveyard, the local Bedouin. And you can see that there are men and women buried there. And that's a big deal because if it was a battle, because a mass burial, right, there's some reason lots of people died. And if it was a battle, it'd be men, right? But because I guess if it was a, get into hypotheticals, but the other thing about it was where they had dug up different graves, what they found was that the people were not buried with any riches or any things. And so again, in a mass burial, and especially if it was a mass burial due to dishonor, they were killed for a reason and for judgment. They're not buried with all these possessions and things that would be kind of a blessing to them and a tribute to them. They're just mass buried. You can tell that there's women because it was a tradition to bury a woman with her grinding stone. And there's actually a bunch of these ancient grinding stones there for grinding manna. Kind of cool, huh? And so you can see all that stuff in Saudi Arabia today. But yeah, that's it. I'm actually going to keep it short today because it was a short little section, but but it deserved its own time, not to be wrapped in with everything else. And so the people complained and they wanted food, and God gave it to them, but it came at a cost. And if you're desiring something, God might finally let you get what you're asking for, and it could be the end of you. It's worth noting. It's a good reminder, I think, for Christians and for believers who are starting to study the Bible and better understand it, that there are people in the Bible whom God brings an early death to, but that does not necessarily mean that they went to hell or that they were condemned. In all honesty, I don't know why we wouldn't see Ananias and Sapphira in heaven. It seems as if they were believers whom allowed Satan to persuade them to make a bad choice. And God made an example of them, and they die. That doesn't mean that they're not in heaven. You might even just look at a very straightforward example. When King David committed sin with Bathsheba, the baby dies. That baby went to heaven. But once again, God allowed a baby to die for a purpose. But as far as that baby's concerned, he just got a fast-track ticket to heaven, no skin off his back. I know it sounds crazy sometimes for us because we're so tied to this world. We're so wrapped to the things of this world. But we need to remember that, that divine judgment. Whenever God brings the end of a life, if it's a believer, he did them a favor because he literally just swept them faster to heaven. If it's an unbeliever, he did us a favor because it's a reminder that if God brings the end of some life and they're an unbeliever, then logically and biblically, they weren't going to bring good to this world, right? And I will guarantee this. I'll just plain guarantee this, that God has never, nor would ever, end the life on earth of someone who was an unbeliever, but would have become an unbeliever, or would have become a believer if they had lived longer. God doesn't do that. God has foreknowledge, right? And so it's just an interesting reminder for us that when God takes the life of people, he knows what he's doing. When God divinely does it and he steps in and alters, the flow of time, God knows what he's doing. These people complained, they gave into their lusts, and God sent plague. Some of them were believers, some of them unbelievers. It's hard to really say. But they all went where they were going to go anyway. And God knew what was happening. And it serves as a reminder for us now that we should not give in to our temptations and to our lusts, because it could bring an early end to what God is trying to do in our life and our ministry. All right. God bless you guys. Have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow.